I'll never forget the look on my son's face that day, the confusion, the embarrassment, the hurt that twisted his little smile into something I'll never be able to erase from my mind. It was supposed to be a simple family lunch. My sister had invited us over, saying she wanted to spend more time together. I thought it was her way of making amends after months of weird tension between us. But when she handed my son a cold bread basket while her own kids dug into $100 worth of fancy takeout, I realized this wasn't a family gathering. It was humiliation, deliberate, cruel, and personal. Tell me, would you have stayed calm if your own sister treated your child like he wasn't worth feeding? Because I didn't, not for long. It all started a few months earlier. My sister Clara and I were never exactly best friends, but we'd always been close enough to celebrate birthdays together, help each other through rough patches, and share the kind of sibling banter that made holidays bearable. I'm a single mom to an 8-year-old boy named Daniel. His father walked out before he was even born, and I had to rebuild everything from scratch. It wasn't easy, but I managed to give Daniel a good life, modest but filled with love. Clara, on the other hand, had married into money. Her husband, Greg, was a successful real estate broker, and their kids went to private school, wore designer clothes, and had more toys than Daniel could ever dream of. Still, I never resented her for it. I thought family was family, and love was more important than money. How wrong I was. The first sign of change came when Clara's oldest son had his birthday party. Daniel and I showed up with a carefully wrapped gift, a Lego set I'd saved up for. Clara looked at it, forced a smile, and said, "Oh, thank you, but you didn't have to. The kids already have so many toys." Her tone wasn't rude, exactly, but it carried that subtle sting, like she was embarrassed by my small gesture. Later, when they brought out the cake, I noticed her making sure her kids got the biggest slices while Daniel got a thin, uneven piece that crumbled in his hands. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was overreacting. Over the next few months, she began to distance herself more. When our mom invited both of us for dinner, Clara would suddenly get busy. When she did show up, she'd brag endlessly about her husband's new car, their vacation to Italy, or how expensive her kids' piano lessons were. I'd sit there, smiling politely, trying to ignore the way she'd glance at Daniel whenever money came up, like he was a reminder of everything she didn't want to be associated with. Then one day, out of the blue, she called me and said, "You should bring Daniel over this weekend. The kids miss him." I wanted to believe her. I really did. So that Saturday, Daniel and I got dressed nicely. He wore his best shirt, a little blue button-down he was so proud of because it made him look grown up. He even carried a small drawing he'd made for his cousins, excited to give it to them. I made a batch of cookies to bring along because I didn't want to show up empty-handed. I remember feeling this hopeful nervousness, like maybe Clara and I were finally reconnecting. But when we got there, I realized how naive I'd been. Her house was buzzing with activity. The smell of expensive food filled the air, and her kids were laughing, playing video games, shouting about sushi and steak. I thought, wow, she must have ordered a feast. When we walked in, Clara greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you made it," she said, looking slightly uncomfortable. We're just about to eat." That's when it hit me. We weren't really invited to join them. We were just their dots still. I tried to stay positive. "Oh, perfect timing then," I said cheerfully. "Daniel's starving." Clara exchanged a look with her husband, then cleared her throat. "Actually, we didn't order enough for everyone," she said awkwardly. "You know how kids are, they eat so much." I froze. "Oh, that's okay," I said quickly, trying not to make a scene. "We can share." But then she laughed, that fake laugh that hides discomfort. "No, really. We didn't order for your son." And she reached for a small bread basket on the counter, handed it to Daniel, and said, "Here, sweetheart, you can have this. There's butter too." My heart sank. My 8-year-old looked at her, then at me, confused. Her kids were sitting at the table with massive portions of food, sushi rolls, shrimp tempura, grilled steaks, fries, and Daniel was holding a cold basket of bread like some charity case. I wanted to scream, but he just nodded politely, whispered "thank you," and sat quietly at the corner of the table. I sat beside him, my stomach in knots, pretending everything was fine while my sister's kids laughed, chewed loudly, and asked for seconds. At one point, Clara's husband even said, "You really should plan better, Clara. Kids shouldn't be left hungry," as if it was somehow my fault. That night, when we got home, Daniel didn't say much. He went straight to his room, left the cookies we baked untouched on the counter, and just stayed quiet. When I checked on him, he was drawing the same picture he'd made for his cousins earlier. Only now he'd drawn himself sitting alone with a piece of bread while everyone else ate. That broke me. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried until I couldn't breathe. That was the night I decided Clara needed to be taught a lesson she'd never forget, but I didn't want to do anything impulsive. I wanted her to feel what humiliation truly meant, not through yelling or confrontation, but through her own pride collapsing in front of everyone she cared about. I knew she was hosting a massive family gathering the next month, our mom's 60th birthday. Clara had volunteered to organize everything, mostly because she wanted to show off her event planning skills to our extended family. She bragged in the family group chat about how it was going to be the event of the year. That's when my plans started to take shape. I offered to help out, baking desserts, arranging decorations, even offering to manage our SVPs. Clara was too busy showing off to realize how much control I had quietly gained. Over the next few weeks, I collected little details: who was coming, what food was being catered, and how everything would be paid for. She told everyone that Greg was footing the bill, but in reality, she had used Mom's savings for the catering deposit. Typical Clara, always trying to impress people with someone else's money. On the day of the party, I arrived early with Daniel. I brought a few homemade dishes and helped the caterer set up. The place looked stunning: fairy lights, floral centerpieces, and a massive buffet table that could have been straight out of a luxury hotel. Guests started arriving, and Clara basked in their compliments, smiling proudly like a queen. "Everything has to be perfect," she whispered to me. "This is Mom's big day. Don't mess anything up." Her tone made my blood boil, but I just smiled and said, "Of course not." When everyone settled in, I quietly spoke to the caterer, a kind older man who'd been dealing with Clara's snippy attitude all day. I explained that Clara had used Mom's savings to pay him and that I wanted to make sure things were fair. He frowned but nodded, saying he'd confirm payment details later. Then, when the main course was about to be served, I made my move. I stood up, tapped my glass, and said, "Before we eat, I'd like to say a few words for Mom." Everyone turned their attention to me, including Clara, who looked confused. I began by thanking everyone for coming, then added, "I just want to take a moment to appreciate how much Mom has done for us, especially how she's helped Clara make this event possible. Because without her money, none of this would be happening." The room went silent. Clara's smile froze. She stammered, "What are you talking about?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Oh, come on, Clara, you didn't tell everyone you used Mom's savings for the deposit, or that you promised to pay her back after Greg's next bonus." Gasps filled the room. Her husband turned sharply toward her, his face darkening. "You did what?" he barked. I could see the panic in her eyes as she tried to spin it. "It's not like that. I was going to," but Greg cut her off. "You said I paid for this? You lied to everyone?" He stormed off toward the caterer, demanding to know the payment details. Meanwhile, I turned to Daniel, who was watching quietly, and whispered, "Watch, baby. Sometimes karma doesn't need yelling." The caterer confirmed everything, and in the chaos that followed, Clara's perfect image crumbled. Guests whispered. Her husband yelled, and she stood there trembling, the same way my son had sat silently that day with his basket of bread. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, Craig announced, "You're paying Mom back tomorrow, every cent." Then he turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry for how she's treated you." I had no idea. That apology in front of everyone wasn't just for me, it was for Daniel too. For every moment he was made to feel less than. And the best part? When dessert was served, I made sure Daniel handed out the cookies we'd baked, the same kind Clara had ignored weeks earlier. Everyone loved them, showering him with compliments. He beamed, finally smiling again, and Clara just sat there, red-faced, realizing that her cruelty had backfired in the most poetic way possible. So that's the situation I was in, humiliated by my own sister, then faced with the choice to either let it go or teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and think, what would you have done in my place? Would you have walked away quietly, or would you have made sure the person who hurt your child paid for it publicly? Because some